And get started. I know we are missing some members of the dais. I presume they will get here when they get here. First item, presentation on Clean Street Task Force. Mr. Fana.
Morning, Mayor, Commissioners. I just wanted to kind of tee this up a little bit because this is really an important initiative that the mayor put forth as part of the Neighborhoods First initiative, and this is really goes to what Neighborhoods First is all about. And this Clean Street Task Force has done a tremendous amount of work over the past 12 months. And Josh McDermott and his team, they're pretty humble. And I just wanted to acknowledge that the amount of work that's been put in. This is sort of on that other duties as assigned, and they have taken those other duties as assigned and really done a huge job in terms of making a tremendous amount of progress in a very little amount of time. And you're going to see as Josh and his team go through the amount of work. But I did want to acknowledge that this team, not just the Public Works team, but a lot of different organizations that are involved, including outside organizations, outside citizen groups that have been involved in this. So kudos to everybody who's been putting it together, because you're going to see the difference it's already beginning to make in a short period of time. Josh, come on up.
Thank you, Armando. Good morning, Mayor, Commissioners, Administrator Johnson. My name is Josh McDermott. I'm the Public Works Director for City of West Palm. I have with me today Amy Marks, our Public Works Superintendent. She's going to assist me in the presentation. And there's we also have some other Clean Street Task Force members if you want to raise your hand. So thank you. Thank you for having us today. This is something I'm really proud to be part of. And it's something, it's a lot of hard work we put into it, so thank you. So here's our agenda. We're going to give you a brief overview of our Clean Street Task Force and each subcommittee. There's 3 subcommittees: our illegal dumping subcommittee, abandoned vehicle subcommittee, and our litter subcommittee. So as part of Mayor Keith James' commitment to Neighborhoods First, an Operation Clean Street initiative was launched through the Neighborhoods First coordinator. The Operation Clean Street Task Force was developed to further enhance that effort and to bring additional accountability and structure to the initiative. So we decided to form subcommittees, and each subcommittee established goals. So the mission of the task force is to develop a vision and strategy to implement best practices and improvement ideas in order to reduce illegal dumping, abandoned vehicles, and litter in our community. So the Operation Clean Street Task Force is a working group comprised of volunteers from the community, various city departments, and the Downtown Development Authority. The full task force, we meet bi-monthly, and the subcommittee each meet monthly. And Amy Marks is going to give an overview of each subcommittee.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us here today. The first subcommittee we're going to talk about, to let you know kind of what we've been working on and some progress that we have made, is the illegal dumping subcommittee. So a few of the reasons we created this task force was because of the prevalence of illegal dumping in our communities. We see it in a financial impact around $1.5 million every year from illegal dumping, and it's also a negative impact to the quality of life for our residents. The illegal dumping subcommittee is led by several members of the Public Works team: Leon Pinder, our sanitation superintendent; Johnny Harris, he's a sanitation supervisor; and Matt Hajazi, our industrial engineer. A few of the things we've been working on is creating metrics and key performance indicators. Once we can really see what is being dumped in our community, we can start to target areas for cleanup, and those metrics are really key in moving this forward so we can move in the right direction and develop programs that will have a positive effect. The installation of cameras with updated technology, funded by DDA, CRA, their funding allowed us to purchase additional cameras to put in hotspots across the city. And then collaboration with the police is critical to this effort. Our solid waste compliance officers are reviewing those cameras on a daily basis, and then teaming with the police department to review the footage. A few of the public outreach initiatives that we've done, there's an example on the screen of one of the sanitation trucks that we recently had wrapped this summer to bring awareness to our illegal dumping reward program and get people to report things as they see it happening. That design was actually done by Mary Pinnock's group in Parks and Recreation. So this is a huge collaborative effort of so many different city departments. And then you can see one example of the Clean Streets brochure that our communications department developed for us to distribute at neighborhood meetings and other public outreach events. So here's an example of a hotspot at 2907 Broadway. This happens in various places all over the city, but this one is a repeat spot that happens quite frequently. Thanks to cameras with this updated technology I mentioned earlier, and monitoring done by our solid waste compliance officers, this actually resulted in 2 felony arrests. Instrumental in these arrests were Sergeant Heiser, Sergeant Gellin, and Officer Rust. Since the initiative's inception, at least 9 people have been arrested for illegal dumping, and more than 178,000 pounds of illegal waste have been removed from our neighborhoods. That's huge.
Repeat that.
Yes, I'm going
Repeat that. No, seriously.
Yeah, since the initiative's inception, at least 9 people have been arrested, and over 178,000 pounds of illegal waste have been removed from our neighborhoods.
That's over 80 tons.
It's a lot. And prior to this initiative, we're not aware of another arrest specifically for illegal dumping. So this is a big accomplishment. Again, this is a collaborative effort of so many departments, and we cannot do it without the support of the police department as well. On the left, you can see another brochure that our communications department, Jerry Marcello and Kathleen Walter, developed for us. This is to promote the reward program. See something, say something. This is how they can report it if they see something in progress or if they see illegal dumping that's already occurred, so we at least can get it cleaned up. On the right, you can see the recipient of our first reward. Nivea Jean Lewis reported illegal dumping in the alleyway behind her house. She didn't even know about this reward program. She just reported it because she wants to see a change, and that's the attitude and that's the culture that we want to instill in West Palm Beach. Another subcommittee we're working on is abandoned vehicles. So obviously, our mission is to reduce the number of abandoned vehicles on both public and private lands. So on public roadways, the police department can red tag the vehicles, and after 24 hours, they can have them towed. On private lands, it's a little trickier. That's our police code enforcement. They can, if it's in general view of the public, they can cite the property owner. Unless it's a safety issue, they can't have it removed, but they can cite it. And if it's not removed in a certain time frame, they can take it to special magistrate and impose fines or put liens on the property. A couple of the initiatives that we're working on is getting all our data in one place. So that's a challenge to make sure that the programs that we have to see what's working and what's not working. So we want to compile that so we can get some accurate numbers. Right now there's several different ways that they're tracking what they're towing and what they're removing and tagging and citing. Another initiative we're working on is to increase awareness about alternative means of disposal for vehicles. There are programs that will come and remove vehicles for you for recycling or auction. The litter subcommittee is led by Michelle Tarabinski with Parks and Recreation. This committee, our mission is to reduce litter by changing behavior through education and public outreach initiatives. So I just want to emphasize this is not a cleanup committee. This committee, we can clean up a roadway and within a week it looks the same again. So this is more about changing the culture and engaging the community. So I want to just highlight a couple of great organizations that we've teamed with, that we've been teaming with for a while actually. But on the left is the Esperanza Center. They do a whole lot of public outreach, really getting our youngest citizens engaged and in the community. And that's so important because it really starts young. that culture and that idea of pride in your community. And then you can also see North End Rise there. They do a tremendous effort organizing and engaging the community as well. They do a lot more than just cleanups. When they are doing cleanups in areas, they're also distributing educational materials. They'll take our brochures and hand them out to the residents. And then the last picture there on the right is actually a training session that we conducted, Public Works Department and Parks and Recreation Department together conducted this training for citizen volunteers in our community that did our first ever litter survey. I'll give you a little more information on that. So one of the first goals that we established as the litter subcommittee is that we decided it would be really helpful to become a Keep America Beautiful affiliate. And this past summer, the commission approved us to move forward with that, so thank you for that. KAB is a nationally recognized program. It was established in 1953, so it's tried and true method that provides framework for community education and hands-on stewardship that seeks to end littering, improve recycling, and beautify communities. So as part of this affiliation process, there was a couple of homework assignments we had. One was to do this community litter survey. So what you can see on the right there, that map, was developed by our GIS department. We had to identify at least 50 sites throughout the city, spread out throughout the city, and they layered it on a GIS for us so that we could see the results. This is just a subsection of that, of our downtown area. The green is little to no litter, meaning it was pretty clean. So you can see that Clematis and Fern Street. And then olive was yellow, so that's slightly littered, meaning that a couple people could probably clean that up. The orange is classified as littered. So that is areas that are going to require a bit more organization and organized effort to get it cleaned up. What this is doing is just setting a baseline. This is just a starting place. This survey will be done every year in October. It was a day-and-a-half process of doing the actual survey. We had 6 citizen volunteers that scored each area, one of them being Commissioner Fox. Thank you, Commissioner Fox, for your participation. Again, this is just a baseline. This is just a start. So we know where to focus our efforts and create programs. The second piece was a focus area research and inventory that had to be done, which was just a series of questions about programs we already have in place, partnerships we already have, the Office of Sustainability and Parks and Recreation and Public Works team together to complete that and submit that to KAB. And then the final piece for becoming an affiliate is the strategic planning training session, which is currently scheduled for February 22nd. A KAB regional director will actually travel to West Palm Beach to train with our core team. And at the conclusion of that planning session or planning training, we will become a Keep America Beautiful affiliate officially. KAB is not the only thing we're working on. We've got several other initiatives going on. Our Office of Sustainability and Parks and Recreation Department are teaming with Marine Life Loggerhead Marine Life Center. They are actually donating some monofilament recycling receptacles, which you can see there an example of on the left, and also some cigarette butt recycling receptacles. They actually will serve it. They will come and collect these cigarette butts. Once they're installed, they'll empty those containers and recycle that material. The signage you see on the right was developed by our communication department. That's actually what will be on the cigarette butt recycling receptacles. They'll be strategically placed in the downtown area and along the waterfront. And then another event that we have going on is the public art event that was recently approved by Commission for this coming Saturday, February 5th, during Green Market. You can see an example of the art that will be put on some of the storm drains on Clematis Street as part of a pilot program. All of these are to keep, not only bring awareness, but also to keep plastics out of our waterways and out of our environment. And now I'll turn it back over to Josh.
Thank you, Amy. So one of the items our task force started working on, Matt Hijazi, he's our industrial engineer in Public Works. He developed several Smartsheets, dashboards. One of them that you're looking at right now, it's the illegal dumping subcommittee dashboard. So he did a lot of work. I'm really proud of the work he put in on this. Amy mentioned it's important to keep track of data, metrics, key performance indicators. So you can see on the left the type of waste that is being dumped. Furniture is at 47%, and then C&D is construction and demolition waste. And we also, on this particular one, you can see let me take my glasses off. So in October, the total waste collected and also the amount of rewards given. So one of the things we noticed when we started analyzing the data, the arrests that we've had. So more than half of the arrests were made, it's citizens within West Palm Beach. Oftentimes they're dumping in the neighborhoods they live in. We've had a few that have come out of the city to dump here, C&D waste, construction and demolition waste, but the majority of what we've seen so far is people that live within city limits. And this is something we look at internally. Eventually we could bring this to the outside or allow access to other city people, city employees. And before we open up for questions, it's important to, again, this is a citywide effort, but it's also important to acknowledge our community partners and resident volunteers. So for our community partners, we have Katie O'Hara, Loggerhead Marine Life Center, Maricela Torres, Esperanza Community Center, Catherine Ast and Rafael Clemente with the DDA, Craig Glover with North End Rise, Diane Bueller, Friends of Palm Beach, Surface 71, and our resident volunteers. Many of these participated in the litter index. So Commissioner Fox, Betsy Dorn, Denise Smith Barnes, Nathan Chow, Michael Odom, and Linda Collin. So again, this is an ongoing effort. This is only the beginning. We have a lot of work to do. We appreciate and we're asking for your continued support. And we'll open up for questions or comments. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that presentation. And I'm so happy to see how this has evolved under your leadership, Assistant City Administrator Fauna's leadership. This really just started out as a germ of an idea that I had with a conversation with our Neighborhoods First coordinator, Tiffany, and we were observing some complaints that were coming in, and there were some illegal dumping complaints, abandoned cars, and I said, well, let's start something. It was really kind of a one-off thing, or at least an initial, what we called Operation Clean Streets, and we pulled together a team, and we went out over a few days and identified areas in our city where illegal dumping, abandoned cars, and really put forth an effort. But the rationale behind it is we really wanted, certainly the residents who lived in those neighborhoods, and they tend to be poor, underserved neighborhoods, historic Northwest, Pleasant City, Coleman Park, et cetera. We know where they are. But we wanted to send a message, not only a message to the violators, but to the residents, that the city cared. And so as you start building pride, if we at the top, as a city, show the residents that they care, then they will start caring. And so we did that, but then it evolved and it grew. And I thank you all for putting together this task force, because it's bringing folks in from all parts of the city to really take a comprehensive look at this problem. I mean, when I think about the audacity of someone to dump 80 tons, over 80 tons of stuff in our city, whether they are residents of those neighborhoods or not, somehow they thought it was okay to go to certain of these neighborhoods and dump debris to that extent. So if you want to go back to that slide with the dashboard, which shows a downward trend, and I'm hoping that trend continues, and we'll continue to monitor that we're getting the word out that it's not okay to treat certain neighborhoods in West Palm Beach as a dumping ground. It is not going to be accepted. And working with the police and others, we have ways in which we are monitoring what's going on. But I think this is the first time that I can remember in this city's history where we have put forth a concerted, comprehensive effort to cut back on this stuff. It just seemed in the past, and I was on the commission for 8 years before becoming mayor, it was kind of like, okay, business as usual. Well, no. And my administration is no longer business as usual, and I really thank everyone involved internally in the city, all of the residential volunteers, and it just shows what can happen when you are intentional about correcting a wrong. So thank you to everyone who's been involved, and let's continue it. I mean, the work is not done, but it does lead to an improvement in quality of life, and it shows the residents in those neighborhoods that we as a city care, and we want to work with them so they can take pride in their own neighborhood. So again, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you, sir.
Questions, comments? Commissioner Warren and then Commissioner Schoaf, Commissioner Lambert.
Thank you. Great job. Our citizens have been talking about the dumping for many years. They've been impacted by it. It affects how they feel. And I'm appreciative that we've heard their outcry and that we've implemented all of these steps in order to address the issue. And it is a great point to talk about pride, because this absolutely lends to their sense of pride in their homes and their streets and their community. And it shows the relationship between the city and the residents in order to improve the community as a whole. So great job with addressing that and actually taking the steps to make the improvements. When I looked at slide 10, I believe it was, and we talked about the litter survey, was the area on Palm Beach Lakes near 95 included in that, or was that, when I saw the map, it looked like it was a lot of downtown streets. Were there other areas outside of downtown that were addressed?
Yes, we actually included areas west of 95 as well. We could share with everybody the GIS layer that shows all the different locations, and I believe that's available to the public as well. You're welcome.
Commissioner Schoaf.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Josh. A huge thank you, Mayor, for making this priority, administration for implementing this program, Parks and Recreation, Public Works. You guys are amazing. Anytime we have a litter pickup event, you're the first ones ready to go, and that is really appreciated and a great partnership through the neighborhoods. This program has been awesome, especially for our North End neighborhoods, which do have a tendency for higher illegal dumping instances. I think having the message out there on sanitation trucks, et cetera, is great. Do we have any other plans of communication, perhaps at kind of the point of the act? So along the fencing at the railroad tracks, for instance, to post up just warning, illegal dumping is a felony offense, call this number, report in here, so that way it's more immediate, because I think the program is great. It's always just about the communication, because I do get this instance frequently in the communities of mattresses and couches and things just showing up places. So can we get the message out? Because I think we have some citizens that would really be interested in reporting.
Yes, we continuously work with Kathleen Walter on the communication piece. During the last cleanup event, RISE actually handed out some brochures on the illegal dumping campaign and the reward program that we've initiated. So we made progress, along the railroad tracks off of Windsor. We were able to finally get in touch with the railroad company to have them clean it up more often. So it is the communication piece. I think when we talk to KAB about our strategic planning, when we go through that training, the communication piece is definitely going to be touched on a lot. So, yeah.
And just real quick on that, it's a huge point for me. We've talked about it a lot. Part of the affiliation with Keep America Beautiful will also include, we're going to have a logo. I remember as a kid, I think we all remember the Give a Hoot, Don't Pollute commercials, or the Native American crying. Those things, we all remember that because it had an impact on us, emotional impact on us. And so we want to create something along those lines in West Palm Beach so that we begin to take pride. There was a picture, that's right there actually. I think that's in your neighborhood, right? So this is actually not in West Palm Beach, but it's a great example. All those water bottles, there was a trash can less than 10 feet away. and yet people thought it was fine to throw the water bottles there. So no matter how many trash cans or how many litter pickups we do, it's not going to make a difference until we change the mindset and the culture, and that's what, it's going to take a long time, but you got to keep plugging away, and as you said, just have that signage everywhere, have those messages out there so that culture begins to change over the years.
Follow up?
Yes, if I may, thank you, and thank you for that communication too, Josh. I think pivotal to some of that planning too is, to the mayor's point, West Palm Beach is taking pride in our neighborhoods, and we need to keep those partnerships. Particularly difficult is always along the railroad tracks, where there seems to be an issue of, is it on West Palm Beach side or is it on the railroad side? So if we could keep that communication too, not only from a litter perspective, but I think what starts to attract litter, et cetera, and illegal dumping is that sometimes things are unkempt back there. The grass isn't mowed. All of that starts to contribute, and to the mayor's point, shows whether you care or whether you don't. And so I think if we can keep with our partners in that so that everybody's doing their part, that's a really key piece of this as well.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lambert?
Thank you so much. Mayor, thank you for bringing up this initiative. I can tell you in the past 4 years that I've been a commissioner, that I've been reporting these things, seen a tremendous increase in picking up and activity. And thank you so much to Josh, to you and your team, always extremely responsive. And I know that the neighbors really appreciate it because, as Commissioner Warren mentioned, this is such an essential part to their quality of life and their pride in their home and where they live. Armando, I'm glad you brought up the give a hoot, don't pollute. I was remembering when I was in middle school that somebody in our car threw something out the window, and I had a full-on meltdown because I was so taught that that was illegal. I seriously thought the police were going to come and arrest us. And so, you know, I am appreciative of the enforcement that we're doing in the picking up, but the education piece is just as essential. And I cannot stress enough what Commissioner Schoaf has mentioned about the railroad tracks. Even though sometimes it might not even be large amounts of trash, it seems like whether it's the wind picking up trash or just as people are walking along there, they toss things more often. And whether it's the city's responsibility or railroad FEC responsibility, it seems like that then attracts, you know, other bad behavior in that area. And so if we could work on relationships there, I would be extremely appreciative. And then finally, just as it relates to the partners, I was glad to see so many partners and neighborhood residents getting involved. I'd love to suggest 2 additional. One is the Latin Quarter, because I know that they're along the railroad tracks there and want to be very helpful and especially communicating in Spanish. The second is Resource Depot, because I know that you talked about changing people's behaviors. And one of the things that Resource Depot is doing right now is a campaign about, and I actually have a sticker here on my computer here. It says, I will figure out what is enough for me, enough. And that's saying, when I saw on your dashboard that furniture was the #1 dumped item, you know, if we can talk to people and get the message out about, you know, how can we refurbish? How can we recycle? How can we, you know, not buy as much to begin with? But I know that that's a whole movement, and that this partner, or community partner, is helping to tackle that. And I just want to say thank you so much. I appreciate everything that you and your team are doing.
Thank you, we appreciate it. And I did reach out to Latin Quarter, I'll do it again, you did mention, and Resource Depot, Penny, that was one of her suggestions as well, so we'll follow up. Thank you, though.
Wonderful.
Josh, can you go back to the dashboard once again? Do we keep track of the number of abandoned cars that we pick up? Is that on the dashboard? Is that a KPI?
Yes, that's our abandoned vehicle dashboard. I don't
Okay.
have it up, but that is one of our metrics or KPIs,
Okay.
yes.
All right. Commissioner Fox.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing, and to Leon and Michelle and Amy and the whole team. It's incredible. I think you have such a difficult job in that so much of this is, you know, you do something and an hour later, you know, someone could be driving by in a car and throwing something out the window, and it's like as if you weren't even there. So it is so appreciated that you are so dedicated to continuing to find ways to change behaviors and to keep our city clean. I am just so appreciative of really, it was an eye-opener going around with your team through all of our districts. I wanted to mention to Commissioner Warren's point that we went through all 5 of our districts. We went to about 20 sites, I think, so that we were looking not just at downtown. I think the map you showed just now was only downtown, but it was just a small portion of what we were doing. And I've heard a lot about the train tracks here, and I think that was a point that we all made when we were doing it, that almost every site that we went to that were maybe under a bridge and around the train tracks were the most particularly littered areas. And you had mentioned, about our partnerships, and that there was going to be some kind of a map that we could see, not just the train and the FEC, but in other parts of the city, that although it might be in our city, we either are not responsible for taking care of it, or we have some kind of
Maintenance agreements.
So I was
Yes.
wondering if you could talk a little bit about that. I know you told us on some of our calls about the kind of map that you're going to have, but is that something that we will all be able to look at and understand better? If we're in a certain area, we could look at the map and know who is responsible for that? Or I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about
Okay.
that.
So I learned recently that somebody else is already working on this. There's a GIS layer that they're working on. So we have maintenance agreements. If it's a county or DOT road, oftentimes there's a maintenance agreement that we're required to do the cleanup there. Not always, but a lot of times that's how it is, how it's written. So somebody's working on a GIS layer where all the maintenance agreements will be accessible through that GIS layer. So an idea would be for our litter index, have those two somewhat mirror each other. So if we click on a street, we'll have all the information, whether it's city owned. So say for instance the residents on 40th Street, the 500 block, they're responsible for cleaning the litter in front of their homes or in the alleyway. They're half of the alleyway or easement, but there's some city owned right-of-ways or DOT or county owned right-of-ways where either the DOT or the county is or we are. So we're establishing a GIS database where we can click on that information and know who's actually responsible for each.
Any other questions? Commissioner Warren.
I'd just like to add on to Commissioner Lambert's list of recommendations and ask you to include or reach out to Teresa Johnson from NCCI and ensure that they're a part of that network.
She is. She's actually on one of our subcommittees. I forget which one right offhand, but when she invites us to meetings, Leon Pender actually goes to a lot of her meetings. It's either Leon or me that goes, but we update her on all of our Clean Streets initiatives. So it's a great recommendation. Thank you.
Any other, Mr. President?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Josh, for everything that you're doing with this program. Thank you to Commissioner Fox. I know that you guys spent an entire day out looking at every district, and it's much appreciated. The question I have, first let me start by saying, I've always had a serious issue with littering and dumping, and I think it's what Mr. Fana had mentioned, that I'm a product of the give a hoot, don't pollute, and it just, I can't understand when I see someone open their window and toss something out. I want to get out of the car and throw it back in, but I don't want to get shot, so I don't do it. But, particularly in my district, you have North Lake Boulevard, Okeechobee Boulevard, where it's like you can clean it up, but then after several thousand cars drive by, it seems like it's back again. Same thing with our parks. Curry Park, I've done many cleanups there, and I came back the next day one time and took some pictures, and I couldn't believe how much litter was back there the next day. It's like, how do we address those issues when it's such a continuing thing? You pick it up one day and it's back the next day.
So out at the Nature Center, they have Parks and Rec has somebody that goes out there once a week, I believe, and John Mingle, his team, they clean up there daily. But what I think it is with North Lake, it's not necessarily somebody always throwing something out their window. It's vehicles going to the dump, stuff blowing off the back of vehicles. So we talked to Solid Waste Authority. They do have some educational videos on the proper way to transport and, don't throw stuff in the back of your pickup, that kind of thing. So we could definitely get that message out there. Again, Armando mentioned garbage cans aren't always a solution for some areas. For some areas, they may be a solution, but it's going to be a huge outreach campaign, public outreach. We're going to learn a lot more when we do the strategic planning, but each road is going to require a different solution, but outreach is a key component.
And I appreciate that, you know, and just riding my bike along North Lake and then heading out Okeechobee and taking a look at what's out there, you're right. It probably is being blown off the back of vehicles heading to the dump, especially out North Lake if they're heading east, you know, because we see all sorts of things as, you know, landscape bags, you know, from mulch and buckets and, you know, just all sorts of stuff that probably gets lifted out and thrown, you know, up against the fence, you know, toward grassy waters. So, you know, whatever we can do to make sure that the western communities are also contemplated in your efforts. And I know that you did do a comprehensive tour of District 4 and those roadways particularly,
Yes.
where there's a lot of litter, so thank you.
You're welcome.
And we have teams don't we have some subcontractors or contractors that we've employed to help us with cleaning up Okeechobee and North Lake?
There are some contractors, if we have a maintenance agreement with, if it's a DOT or county road, we have contractors that they're supposed to clean up before they do the mowing. That's part of their contract. And Parks and Rec has one employee, I believe it's one employee that does like supplemental cleanups on some of these roadways.
All right. We may want to look at, for future budget years, seeing if we could beef up those efforts out there. One quick question, and this is, I didn't know this. What happens to recycled cigarette butts? Where do they go?
That's a great question. We learned,
I never heard of such a thing.
I didn't know they were plastic either, but we learned working with sustainability and the company that's going to be recycling them, they turn them into, I think, Penny, correct me if I'm wrong, park benches or something like that, right? So park benches.
Oh, that's
So we'll be
pretty
sitting
cool.
on the cigarette butts.
Do we have any in our city yet?
What, park benches?
I mean, recycled cigarette park benches. Do we have places to put our butts that have been made out of butts? So you see what I did there? Okay,
That's good.
all right, that's a good one. That's a good one.
We can't even charge $20 for that one. Inside joke. We don't have the cigarette butts yet, the containers, but we're working with the
Okay,
Marine.
okay.
They're going to be putting them in, installing them. But, you know, I had a story that was relayed to me by Rafael Clemente, because cigarette butts to me was tobacco, and, you know, it'll go back into the soil or whatever, but I didn't realize the filters, you know, they're plastic filters, and Rafael Clemente relayed a story about the clean team crew in downtown a few years ago picking up, and he asked them to keep the cigarette butts from a weekend of cleaning, and he said it was just bags and bags of cigarette butts just on the waterfront. So, and that stuff, because it's plastic, you have it stays there forever. So it's a huge problem that I wasn't even aware of, and I'm sure a lot of people are not aware of. You see somebody throw a cigarette butt, you don't really think much about it, but it's a big problem.
All right, and so as part of our education and communications program, once we get the containers to put them in, we'll certainly have to emphasize that.
Definitely.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, anything else? Well, again, thanks to all involved. Thank you, Josh, for your leadership. Thanks to everyone in the room who's part of this team. Tiffany, for this kind of being your idea initially from some of our conversations. To everyone involved, thank you, thank you, thank you. And we will continue to make this a priority of this administration because, again, the residents of those neighborhoods need to know that we're in this with them. We do care about their quality of life. Okay, thank you.